Welcome to our present state versus history on Speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield.
Hello, okay, folks. Here we are again, back on the pod. It's Thursday morning, the first day of June. Wow. Halfway through this year already. Time keeps on flipping into the future. Well, I just want to take a minute to say I appreciate those that are supporting. You can check us out on the website, truegospelchurch.org. There's all kinds of links there to different folks, different information we got going on. We got the National Center for Constitutional Study, the University of Christian Studies and Seminaries, which, by the way, Dr. Guy, the chancellor of the university, is going to be in Neosho, Missouri, Saturday. Let's see, I believe that is the 3rd. Yeah, Saturday the 3rd from 2 to 5. He's putting on an active shooters response class. It's primarily focusing on churches. Any pastors in the area that's listening to this podcast, or anybody at all that is interested in going through such a course, if you have a concealed carry permit and you're carrying, it would be really good information for you. It's free to attend. We'll probably be taking up an offering there, and anybody that completes this course is going to get a certificate of completion. If it's a church or pastor there, then there'll be a certificate for the church that is issued, which will help in some cases on your insurance because you have a active plan to protect against the craziness that's going on in this world we live in. So there's a plug for that. There again, an active shooter response class training course. It's 3 hours long. It will be at the New Life Fellowship Church at Neosho under the flag at 60 and Business 49 intersection. There's a great big flag that Neosho has up that you can see for miles. If you go down that dead end road right there, there's a church house right there under that flag. New Life Fellowship, Neosho, Missouri, from 2 to 5, Saturday, the 3rd of June, 2023. So we'd like to invite anybody that wants to come to that to come. Be a great time to fellowship. I will be there. Not that that matters. Dr. Guy, of course, will be there. Pastor Mark Buzzard will be there. Anybody that's been listening to the panels that we've been having. So give you a chance to meet those folks along with some other folks from the church, some great teachers we won't get into. But anyway, just want to mention that. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to being able to spend time with my good friend, Dr. Guy. I haven't been able to sit and visit with him and Kathy for some time due to the events of this society that we live in, which is kind of what we want to deal with a little bit today. There again, we appreciate you for your support. On that website, there is a donate button. You can click to that, and we appreciate any help that we can get on this podcast. We're working on trying to progress things to the point to where we can do some video. But once again, the technical aspect of those things is my roadblock, and I'm trying to find somebody to help me out there. But anyway, enough of that. I've been reading some headlines. We're going to go back, deal a little bit more in the constitutional aspects again, especially today. I don't know how more of these will do, but if you recall back some time ago, and you can go back into the archives of the podcast that we have on that Spreaker platform, and scroll down through those episodes, you'll find a series there of the principles of freedom that are the basic fundamental building blocks that our forefathers were using when they put together this Constitution and dealt with the framing of this great nation that we live in. And I want to go back and visit principle number 13, which says a constitution should be structured to permanently protect the people from the human frailties of its rulers. See, the biggest fear that the founders had of our country was that we would have rulers that would come in and become tyrannical again and try to control and put their thumb, if you will, on the people. Thomas Jefferson, he said, "Let no more be said of the confidence of man, but bind him down from his mischiefs with the chains of the Constitution." See, these guys, they knew the human nature. I've said this multiple times in the past, that we don't have a constitution that is a how-to-do government manual. It is a constitution that is a how to control the human nature manual, because these men, they understood the elements of humanity. And man given with too much power, without enough restraint to hold him in a place of confinement, is a dangerous thing. And this is what we have going on in this country today, not because we have a single individual that has all this power, but because we have allowed the separation or the deterioration of the walls that separated the powers. You know, I had a deal here a while back of the 3 solutions basically to set this thing back in order. And, you know, it's not a complicated thing. It's really pretty simple, but it's, should I say, nearly impossible to implement, because it requires the taking away of something that has been given already to some of these positions. And once you give something to somebody, it's really hard to get it back. And we've allowed these powers to be perverted in, should I say, consolidation, which was Thomas Jefferson and so many of the forefathers were concerned tremendously about this consolidation of powers. They've used the Supreme Court as the catalyst to bring these things back together. And that's exactly what Jefferson was afraid of when he was trying to put the amendment into our Constitution to be able to remove these Supreme Court justices, or at least overturn their rulings. And the 3 things that we've done to alter our Constitution over the years is we froze the number of state representatives. We've talked about this before, and that needs to be unfrozen. It needs to be on a slide with the population, like the original amendments or proposals, there's the word I'm looking for, were presented. We need to correct the fact that our senators are now elected officials. They need to be appointed by the state legislators like they were intended to be, because that gets them out of this public pressure for re-election. And it needs to go back to that 17th Amendment. It needs to be appealed. We need to eliminate it, get it out of the Constitution. It should have never been allowed to be in. And the Jefferson Amendment, which was never being able to get to the floor to be ratified, needs to be put on the floor. It needs to be voted in place, and it needs to be ratified, which puts the 2/3 majority of the combined House and Senate, the Congress combined, to and the president to be able to overturn or remove a Supreme Court justice. And, you know, that's a real hard thing to begin with, but it's not an impossibility, and it needs to be put in place. And if we would put these things back together and to get them back into our Constitution, that would immediately set the rotation of terms in motion back to the way it should be. People say we need term limits. Well, this would take care of the term limit thing without placing term limits on it, because every 6 years that the 4 to 6 years that the appointments would come up, they would have to be revisited. They would have to either be reappointed or excused. And the senators in the House of Representatives, or the House of Representatives is already an elected body, so their terms would be completely controlled by the people, and it would put the rotation back in schedule as to these positions that these people are setting in for in eternity, because they're being able to buy their seats. So that's just one thing, but I don't really want to focus on that so much today. But that I just want to reiterate those things, because nothing's changed there. But if we were following our Constitution in the aspect of what it was designed to be, that's my point for bringing those three things up, we would not be in the mess we're having today. But you see, the bottom line is the Constitution of the United States is not going to save our society anyway. There's a grander plan that's going on. The United States, yes, has it served its purpose? Is its time passed? I can't answer those questions. Can we restore things back? Yeah, it's a possible solution, but it's so difficult. It's probably not very likely. You say, well, you're not sounding very, uplifting or what have you. No, because I'm a realist, you see. My primary focus of these podcasts is not to save the United States. It's to save the souls of men. Because where the problem lies isn't even so much in the activity that's taking place as much as it is the ignorance and incompetence to know what the truth is. Because the Bible tells us in the last days that he will send a strong delusion that they might believe a lie, you see. And the big lie is upon us right now. I mean, what greater lie could there be other than dealing with the sexual orientation of a born child? It's pretty obvious just by the physical appearance of a child what the should we say biological makeup of that child is. And to believe that it's something other than that is a grand delusion, to say the least. And it is a horrific lie. But you see, it's got way beyond that. It's into the whole thought process of the people as a rule, because we've forgotten these basic principles, such as the 13th principle of our Constitution, that man is untrustworthy. Man as a whole is untrustworthy to be put into positions of power and leadership. And when we go back to the Word of God, and we find out what the qualifications of leadership are and what the qualifications of a good leader is, and you get into the book of Timothy, and the first Timothy is an overview of qualifications of leaders, and Paul's writing to Timothy, and he spells out different levels of leadership and different qualifications and different aspects all the way down through. And then he warns about selfish living and having the appearance of evil, or the appearance of God, and denying the power thereof, and the society that has erred from the truth and from the sound doctrines, see? And he gives a warning about that whole thing with the society growing into believing false sciences, and those things are all in First Timothy, and then Second Timothy is basically a warning of the perversion of how society has grown into that perverse state, to where it is denying the truth. Basically, we don't have time to get into all of those scriptures today, but you can read 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy. They're not very long books. And you can see the progression of what Paul's warning Timothy about, dealing with leadership inside the house of God, I remind you. And if these things that Paul's writing about to Timothy are dealing with the house of God, how much more is the society around us that is not serving God, does not understand who God is, does not care who God is? How much more are they going to be brought into these things? I mean, we look at our governments today. We have a government today that is in vast contrast with what we should be standing for. They hate it. They are trying to tear this nation down from within. If you study the history, you study Karl Marx, you study all the communistic manifestos and all of those things, and you read into those things, you will find that almost 100% they agree that the only way you're going to destroy the United States is from within. And the moral decay and the lack of patriotism and standing up for a civil society that we allow into this country, the more likely this country will implode from within. And that's exactly what they're doing. Everybody's worried about the China invasion and, Russia coming down from the north and all those things going on. And I'm not saying that couldn't happen, and we need to be prepared for that. But more likely, it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. And we are being eroded from within because we have this constant bombardment of this lie that's been proposed. I mean, for Pete's sake, when you just go out into public and see the behavior of individuals, it's mind-boggling, My wife and I went into a little local restaurant yesterday. We both had busy days late, and we got together, and time we got out of the house of God, it was late, and we hadn't eaten supper, so we just swung by a little local eating joint and went in there to eat. And not very many people in there, it's kind of quiet, it's getting late, they're trying to close things up, and there's a table off over not too far away from us sitting over there, and they're just running on, and talking and carrying on, yaddy, yaddy, yaddy. And I mean, the talking loud enough everybody in the place can hear them, and the foul language going on, and just like they were, out in a barroom brawl parking lot or what have you. Now, I have people in this truck shop coming in, and they got their little mouths going and carrying on and, and whatever. But, when I was a child, my folks had a standard when you were in public. You behaved yourself a certain way. Even if your vocabulary was colorful all the time, which my father, he's got a pretty colorful vocabulary. But when we were in a public restaurant, he had sense enough to know that not everybody in there appreciates that, you might say. And so you have respect for those around you. See, that's what we're missing in our society. I'm not dogging the dude for talking the way he was talking. If that's the way he wants to talk, hey, so be it. The wicked are wicked. You want to be what you want to be, go ahead. But when you come into a public restaurant where everybody in the place is paying good money to sit and have a decent meal in peace, it's called mutual respect. It's called honor. It's called selflessness, which we are losing more and more and more in our society. Well, and why? We have to ask ourselves, why? Well, it's because we're not going to church. Well, that has something to do with it, but why aren't we going to church? See, I mean, let's just keep getting down into the root of the matter here. And the root of the matter is we've believed a lie. It's been going on for a long time. It's not a new thing. And it's just now getting to the point to where it is so prevalent that it is being exposed. I mean, I was reading headlines today in the newspaper, and we've got the Mexican president, working with a propaganda, pushing information out to get what he said, Mexicans who are living and working in the United States not to vote for the Republicans because he doesn't like their border policies and their restriction of fentanyl coming across the border. So, well, first of all, what's wrong with all that? Well, first place, what's wrong with it is we have a president that's not doing anything about it. We got a foreign government meddling in elections already, and we got a president that acts like he could care less because he has an attitude that doesn't really matter anyway. See, and that whole episode right there is wrong. But here we go back to the whole voting aspect. You can legally be a foreign national and be in our country and work and live, and that's okay, but you're not a citizen, so you don't have the right to vote anyway. So why would we be concerned about people who are in our country that are legally in our country, working and living, from whatever country they are, what their political views are, because they can't vote anyway? They're not citizens. See, we forgot that simple thing. We've got all of these people we want to flood into our country, and they're not citizens. They're here illegally, keyword, but yet we want them to be able to vote, or we're allowing them to vote. What is that? They're not even members of this society. See, if you're not a citizen and you can't prove citizenship, then there is no vote anyway. So all of his propaganda doesn't matter, because the people who are citizens in this country, regardless of where they have come from, if they are true patriot citizens, they are going to want the best for this country if they haven't believed the lie. So they're going to vote for what's best for the security and for the long term of this country, dealing with every issue, not just the things that are going on in the southern border, and dealing with our open policy to our foreign nationals like China, who are not even our friends. We're allowing deals for them to come in and buy property and different things, and we have a political leadership that thinks that stuff's all perfectly okay. It's a delusion. And it's not just Democrat and Republican, because at both sides of the aisle, we've got people in there that are sensitive to all these things. They use all kinds of propaganda to convince people that, well, it's okay. And now I'm reading through the newspaper articles, and I find a place where this young man, a seventh grader, has filed a lawsuit against his school because his school has opened the door and they're propagating a certain ideology. And I won't go into what it is, because we did that experiment here a while back, and there's certain keywords that we use that they'll censor this whole thing, and then it won't broadcast because they'll have it kicked off the deal. So the school has opened the door to a certain side of an issue, and they've plastered certain things out for public viewing, and they've made it quite clear that these things are what they consider to be acceptable. And so an individual student of the school has wore a shirt that is in direct disagreement with the said proposed position, and yet that's not allowed. See, and this is what we've come to in our society. I listened to a speech from a prominent business leader of a pretty good size chain here just yesterday, a female woman talking about how we're all about equality, we're all about equal, not discriminating against any race, color, creed, or sect of people, and going on about how we need to accept everything and how it's all okay, that we need to get away from all of this racism and all of this division. And then in the next breath turns right around and says that the company has increased its efforts 110% in contracts towards one particular ethnic group of society, and it has increased 83% in its efforts of hiring just that one particular ethnic group. Well, hello, what happened to neutrality? What happened to equality? If a company is truly just hiring people that are qualified for the job, then the people that work in that company are going to be a direct representation of the crosscut of whatever the society is in the area of geographics that company is in. If that company is a national company and it's all across the United States, then it's going to be a pretty good cross cut of the entire population of the country. But if it's just geographically located in one place, then whatever the demographics of that location are is going to be reflected of that company. What's the problem with that? That's just the way it's going to be. That's not discriminatory. That's not being biased. It's just called the way it is. And if we don't get back to having some common sense and thinking for ourselves and being able to operate in the truth of these things, we're never going to walk in any kind of harmony. There's always going to be this disruption because these people that claim to be promoting peace and unity and tranquility with each other are the greatest promoters of division. It's like it's not okay to discriminate unless you're just not discriminating against my people or whatever my views are. Then it's okay. That's nonsense. Whatever happened to the public school system being able to have public conversations about public situations without taking either side and allowing the debate to come across to chase the rabbit all the way to the hole and allow logical conclusions of the truth to surface? See, we don't do that anymore. We paint the society to the outcome that we want. It's just like so many times in our law enforcement and in our doctrine and other things, we come to the conclusion that we want, and then we look for the evidence to support our conclusion rather than looking at the evidence and drawing a conclusion from them. Well, that's probably enough ranting for one day, huh? We've got to get back to the principles of our Constitution. We got to get back to our civil society, and we got to get back to being a good citizen. George Washington, when he finally left public office completely in his farewell speech, he made it very clear. I'm not going to try to quote from his speech, but he made it very clear that in his mind, the most important role of anybody in this country is the role of a good citizen. And he was looking forward to just going back to his farm and being a good citizen. Good citizens, godly men and women who live according to the principles of the Word of God, which happen to be the principles that founded this country, will be good citizens. They will be moral people, and they will walk in a place of order and harmony no matter who is around them, unless the people around them have come to kill, steal, and destroy, and then the war is on. And that's what's happening in this country, is those that have come to kill, steal, and destroy are rising up, becoming more prevalent, and the good, peaceful people of this nation are trying their very best to hold the fort without disrupting and creating bloodshed. But even the forefathers themselves said, if we did not hold to these truths and hold them to the place of our civil societies, the only outcome would be bloodshed to bring correction to the course that we have set. Now, I am definitely not promoting such things, but as I see this society of ours progress to the ways of evil, there's very little hope of restoring the direction that we are on in a manner that is peaceable. And I hope that someday, somewhere, somebody will come on the scene and open the eyes of the blind in the positions of power and influence, and they will not shrink back, and they will stand for those things. Well, we've seen one or two try that in the past, and it's going to take more than just one or two men. We've got to correct the path that this Constitution has been placed on over a period of 75 years or more. We got to correct the number of representatives, appeal the 17th Amendment, and enact the Jefferson Amendment. And with that, I'll leave you on the pond. Have a wonderful day.